It's 6 p.m. on Monday here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Hwang Jie. These are the top stories we're following this evening. Korea's political battle for the truth over civilian surveillance by the nation's spy agency intensifies after an agent involved in the hacking scandal dies in apparent suicide. Expectations mount for the end of the MERS outbreak in Korea, with the country reporting no additional cases over the past 15 days. The hospital, deemed the epicenter of infections, also resumes its operations. Japanese construction company Mitsubishi Materials apologizes for using American prisoners of World War II as slave laborers. Following the death of a National Intelligence Service agent, the political row in Korea continues to escalate surrounding the spy agency's hacking scandal. The ruling Saenuri Party is calling for an on-site inspection of the NIS and for lawmakers to refrain from exploiting the incident for political gains. But the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy wants a parliament-level hearing and separate probe led by the prosecution. A NIS spy surnamed Im was found dead in a car on Saturday with a handwritten note denying allegations that the agency meddled in the 2012 presidential election and spied on citizens. The apparent suicide note came soon after the agency admitted it had purchased a hacking program from an Italian company in 2012. Now, more than 2 weeks have now passed since Korea reported its last case of MERS. On top of this, all hospitals under close MERS watch are now running normally after the final one, Samsung Medical Center, got the green light this morning. Connie Kim tells us more.
With the outbreak of the Middle East respiratory syndrome nearing an apparent end, all 15 hospitals under close MERS watch are now back to operating normally. Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul, considered the epicenter of the virus, is fully operational as of Monday after lifting its partial temporary shutdown that lasted more than a month. 91 people, nearly half of total MERS patients, were confirmed to have contracted the disease while at the hospital. Seoul's MERS response headquarters said no additional traces of the virus were detected in hospital wards and the emergency rooms where MERS-confirmed patients were treated. Adding to the good news, the National Medical Center, on the forefront of quarantine and treatment of MERS patients, has also started to receive outpatients and patients for hospitalization. With Korea seemingly back on track to recover before the outbreak, the government promoted Korea's need to normalize all personal exchanges during a briefing session for the diplomatic corps in Seoul on Monday. Seoul's foreign ministry said Korea is now safe from the virus, as no additional MERS patients had been confirmed for about 2 months since the first case. It noted no foreign tourist was infected with the disease in the country. The first MERS patient was confirmed in late May, and since then, 186 people have been confirmed with the virus, with 36 deaths. With the figures remaining unchanged for more than a week, officials say it could signal the end for the MERS outbreak as early as next month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The leaders of Korea and Honduras held summit talks in Seoul today. Topping their agenda was boosting energy cooperation, which is expected to resolve the severe power shortage in Honduras and also help both sides meet their greenhouse gas reduction goals. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
The Honduran economy is one of the weakest in Central America, recording a GDP of $19 billion last year. With the country greatly lacking infrastructure, many Hondurans suffer from a chronic shortage of electricity. Celebrating 53 years of diplomatic ties, Korea and Honduras agreed to join efforts to improve the power supply system in the Central American country. Some of the methods include establishing an eco-friendly village that is energy self-sufficient, reducing power loss during electricity distribution, and supplying electric vehicles. Honduras is also interested in the Korea-based Global Climate Fund project to produce electricity from methane gas found in landfills. At a joint leaders conference in Seoul, President Park Geun-hye said while considering their mutually beneficial trade structures, the two sides agreed to actively spur trade and investment and increase joint energy infrastructure projects. While the deal will help both sides to develop expertise in the field of new energy, it's also expected to assist them in fulfilling their pledges in greenhouse gas emissions. With its energy initiatives in countries like Honduras, Korea hopes to garner international approval to fulfill its reduction pledge of 37% relative to a level forecast by the year 2030. Korea has also agreed to share its knowledge from the 새마을 운동, or new community movement in the 1970s, to develop and modernize the Honduran rural economy and continue to support Honduras' special economic zone project for job creation. Choi Yusan, Arirang News.
It has taken 70 years for the Japanese firm Mitsubishi Materials to formally apologize for forced labor of American soldiers captured during World War II. Still, the company has yet to apologize to the tens of thousands of Koreans that were forced to work in its industrial plants. Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
A prominent Japanese corporation for the first time has acknowledged and formally apologized for the forced labor of American POWs from World War II in its Mitsubishi mines. At a solemn ceremony on Sunday by the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, Mitsubishi Materials Corporation's senior executive officer made a sincere apology to about 900 POWs that suffered hardships in Mitsubishi mines and industrial plants.
As the successor of Mitsubishi Mines, I offer the most remorseful apology to those who suffered harsh and severe hardships.
One of the surviving POWs, James Murphy, accepted the apology he has sought for decades.
This is a glorious day, for one thing, because for 70 years we wanted such action.
The Japanese government has apologized about the use of U.S. POWs used as forced laborers during World War II. Mitsubishi says it plans to apologize to the Netherlands and other countries that suffered forced labor by the Japanese. But when asked about plans to apologize to the tens of thousands of Korean victims, he said it has no plans as there is currently an ongoing lawsuit on the matter.
I have not much to say as there is a lawsuit ongoing with the Korean victims.
Time is of the essence as most surviving victims are well over 80 years old and may die before they receive compensation or an apology from the Japanese firms. The Japanese government, as well as the companies that use Korean forced laborers, have refused to pay any compensation, saying all issues regarding its colonial rule, including sex slavery and monetary reparations, were covered by a 1965 package. Kim Hyun-bin, ASEAN News.
South Korea's defense ministry says it will deliberate whether to invite North Korea to the upcoming annual Seoul Defense Dialogue for the second time. At a regular press briefing today, Defense Ministry spokesman Kim Min-seok said the ministry has not made a final decision on re-inviting Pyongyang, adding that it will inform the press if it decides to do so. This comes after Seoul suggested last Friday that the North attend the dialogue in September. It was the first time the South has extended such an invitation since the talks began in 2012. However, North Korea was quick to reject the offer. And North Korea is reportedly getting ready to attend the ASEAN Regional Forum in Malaysia next month. An official at Seoul's Foreign Ministry said Monday that although North Korea has not officially confirmed its attendance yet, it seems to be settling on accommodations for its delegation for this year's ARF meeting. North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong most likely will head the North Korean delegation. Lee's attendance is raising speculation about the possibility of Pyongyang holding talks with Seoul and Beijing on the sidelines of the annual meeting. He was in Myanmar for last year's ARF meeting, but did not hold a separate meeting with his South Korean counterpart Yoon Byung-se. Now, concern is growing in countries like South Korea, Japan, and the United States that China's recent economic instability could negatively impact their own economies. But according to a recent study, the country that will be the hardest hit is North Korea. Son Jung-in has more.
North Korea's high dependency on China will take a toll on the communist state should the Chinese economy fall apart. This, according to Seoul's Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, which released a report on Monday. The report said North Korea's exports to China accounted for 72% of its outbound shipments from 2009 to 2013. The country's imports from the world's second-largest economy accounted for more than 76% during that same period, most of them being daily necessities like oil, corn, and flour. This is in stark contrast to South Korea, whose trade volume with China makes up only about 20% of its total trade with the rest of the world. North Korea's trade with China has grown at an alarming pace over the last 4 years, mostly due to the surge in demand for raw materials. In 2013 alone, its exports to China rose more than 17% compared to a year earlier. However, the volume sharply declined following China's economic slowdown last year, dropping by 2.4% from a year earlier, mainly due to a fall in demand for major export products like iron ore and hard coal from China. Experts say that amid recent volatility in China's stock markets and slower growth, Pyongyang may not only face economic damage, but also political instability if it fails to find alternatives for China. 손정인, Arirang News.
Another round of working-level talks on a free trade agreement deal between Korea, China, and Japan has kicked off in Beijing. If the deal is signed, it will represent Korea's first trade pact with Japan. Shin Se-min reports.
A new round of working-level talks for a free trade agreement involving Korea, China, and Japan is well underway, with the three countries looking to hammer out any remaining differences. It's the 8th time the countries have met for trilateral talks of this kind, and the talks are expected to last throughout this week. Korea's trade ministry says the three countries will discuss issues like modalities for lifting tariffs and ways to free up the service and investment sectors. Depending on the results of the talks, the chief negotiators will meet in China sometime in September for their 8th scheduled meeting. The three neighboring countries originally announced plans to begin negotiations in November 2012 and have since been planning comprehensive trade deal discussions. Seoul currently has a free trade deal in place with Beijing, but not with Tokyo. In 2004, Japan's opposition to liberalize its agricultural market put bilateral talks with Korea on hold, suspending a total of 6 rounds of bilateral negotiations. The bilateral trade climate has cooled recently, dropping by 14% in the first quarter of this year, unlike previous instances of trade volume jumping over 400-fold since the two countries established diplomatic ties half a century ago. Last year was the 3rd consecutive year that Korea and Japan posted negative growth in bilateral trade. Therefore, this FTA pact with Japan is viewed as crucial as it represents Seoul's first trade pact with Tokyo. Seoul is also considering entering a U.S.-led regional FTA, also known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership, with a dozen other countries, including Japan. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea's strong exports have kept the economy ticking over relatively nicely in the past few years, but a combination of external factors have dented outbound shipments in recent months, stoking concerns that the days when Korea's export-oriented strategy worked wonders could be over. Kwon So-ah has the details.
Vendors at markets like this, sitting right next to the world's #1 shipbuilder, are directly feeling the effects of hardships Korea's manufacturing sector and exporters are going through. This small restaurant is a classic example, run by Cha Hwa-sun and located in a market nearby Korea's biggest shipyard operated by Hyundai Heavy Industries, where her husband is employed.
So many shops have closed down. Everyone in this area is struggling.
When the company was going through good times, the markets here were bustling, but they aren't anymore as new export orders have been on the decline since the end of last year.
And it's not just ship exports that are being affected by tumbling global trade volume. Posting negative growth of 5% in on-year exports so far this year, the combination of external factors such as the debt crisis in Greece and China's stock market meltdown are expected to hurt domestic exporters even more in the months to come. Still, some remain optimistic that Korea can avert these circumstances.
We need to reduce our dependency on China and broaden our export markets. Korea should also put greater attention on the United States, as we expect to see the U.S. economy picking up steam going forward.
Other strategies include moving China-based manufacturing to other countries or back to Korea to enhance production domestically or even reduce the emphasis on manufacturing altogether. Shifting focus to exporting more services is viable, as the value of this sector has jumped in recent years. 권소아, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Stay tuned for more updates coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.